Okay, so last night, Clay and I watched the new Dungeons and Dragons movie, Honor Among Thieves, with Chris Pine, Michelle Rodriguez, Hugh Grant. I don't remember the name of the guy who plays Simon, but I know he's the guy from Detective Pikachu. I want to say he's a Smith, but I could be misremembering that. But regardless, I saw the movie. So video's going to be in 3 segments. No spoilers, mid spoilers, which it's more mild spoilers than mid spoilers. Let me rephrase that. But the mild spoilers, like going over a lot of the individual set pieces without going into the nitty gritty of the climax, and then the nitty gritty of the climax and the end of the film. So starting off, this movie's a ton of fun. I had an absolute blast. It is a fun adventure. There are definitely a lot of moments where I could just feel the players around the table coming up with shit and bouncing ideas off each other. Like the first scene in the movie, the prison break. Yeah, that sounds like insane shit D&D players would come up with. Like I know, like me and my Pathfinder team, we've had a lot of situations like they're like, okay, not necessarily like a prison break, but like we planned a heist. We've planned, like I think even in the last session, we were trying to get our vehicle because it's Pathfinders. Like there are cars, or at least in ours there are cars. So like, we were trying to get our car over a bridge, but the bridge was already full of stuff, and so it was like, how do we actually maneuver it over it? And all like let's try this thing. Oh, that's not going to work because X, Y, and Z. Okay, well, what about this? That might work, but here's some reasons why it maybe won't. So just coming up with all this kind of shit to like maximize efficiency. I love that. And there were moments in the movie where I could see it happening. There were also moments in the movie where I could just feel the DM going, oh, you guys are really dumb. Like, really, guys? Okay, so as to not end the campaign, here's some kind of bullshit. Like, I'll get into that part specifically. If you see the movie, you might know what I'm talking about. But I had a lot of fun with it, and I feel like there is enough heart in the movie, too. There's a scene between Michelle Rodriguez and Bradley Cooper that I think is... I tried to say thought and think at the same time, and it did not come out well. It actually really worked for me. It's like, this is genuinely very sweet and heartfelt, and there are kind of those moments that I feel like do add a nice emotional center to the movie. It is not just dumb action, it's Dungeons and Dragons. There's a lot of dumb action and adventure, and that's what makes it great. But I feel like there is a nice emotional center to it. And then on top of that, I do think the actors do a good job. Like I said, that scene between Cooper and Rodriguez, I really like. Chris Pine is consistently like entertaining and fun throughout the movie. Shout out to Hugh Grant. Hugh Grant having the time of his life. He's so consistently funny in this movie. Like, he's such a slime ball. And like that's not a spoiler that he's the villain of the movie. Within like the first 15 minutes of a 2-hour movie, you find out he's the bad guy. Like, I don't think I'm really spoiling that much. Sorry if I did. But he's just so slimy. He's such a piece of shit. But he's so consistently funny about it. Like, he just has no qualms with anything he's doing. It's like, you love to hate him. Like, I talked about my Owl House video not too long ago. It's not like the level of Bellows where, like, this guy is just awful. But he is a piece of shit that I love to hate. He does a great job in it. Yeah, there are a lot of like abilities, spells, monsters throughout the movie that I recognized. There was one in particular I was really expecting to see, and I didn't. We'll talk about it in the mild spoilers, but for the most part, there's enough nice little fan servicey bits. I'm like, I'm really hoping to see that. Oh, there it is. Oh, I didn't even think about that, but that's really fucking cool to see. Let's go. And yeah, I mean, that's basically it. Just, I would say it's a very good time if you play Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder, any kind of those tabletop Wizards of the Coast games. Well, I can only speak for those specifically. Like, I don't know if they do Shadowrun or if that's someone else, and I don't know how similarly that plays with its systems and monsters and shit. But if you play those games, I think you'll have a really good time. If you don't, I think you would still have a good time. Think of it as like a Pirates of the Caribbean movie, like the first one. This is a good, I'm here to have a good time. The actors are having a good time. It's, I guess, take a shot every time I say the phrase good time. I think I've said it already like 8 times in 5 minutes. Anyways, that's my basic, no spoiler, I guess mild spoilers with Hugh Grant. So now we get into the actual mild spoilers. This is mostly just a list of scenes that I really liked or things that I recognized. The wild shape scene, there's a druid in the party, and she does wild shape a few times throughout the movie, but there's this one scene where she's escaping the castle, where she just goes from being a bug to a mouse, then back to a human, then back to a mouse, and then she turns into a bird, and then she turns into a deer. Like, this is such a cool scene. I'm also kind of in my head going, how? And you're like, wait a second. How many wild shapes does she have? Because I think in our Pathfinder campaign, we do have a druid, and 5e and Pathfinder are two different systems. I'm like, but I know he has at level 8, like 4. It's either 3 or 4. She's done a lot without a long rest. I'm not exactly how the limit in 5e, but like she might be a really fucking high level character. Holy shit. And then Simon's casting like reverse gravity at one point. I'm like, isn't that like an 8th level spell? Oh shit, he's like really high level then. Damn, that's badass. But I had fun with that. The hither thither staff. That's what I was saying earlier. Just the moment where like okay, so first off, the Thayan guy, I don't remember what his name was, but the paladin. He just, I don't want to say reeks because it makes it sound like it's a bad thing. But very quickly, I was like, this is a DM character. This is a character the DM starts like an NPC who's there to join the party, help them with stuff, and give them some background, give them some lore. And of course, they're just so cool and they kick so much ass. And the part where he's just explaining the puzzle, like, okay, this is what you guys have to do. This is how you cross the bridge. It's really hard. And it just, in less than a second, they haven't even actually started the puzzle yet. It immediately gets fucked up. And then, hey, wait a second. That walking stick we found, it turns out it's a hither thither staff, which was, for all intents and purposes, it's a fucking portal gun. It really just kind of felt like the DM going, oh, I gotta pull some shit out of my ass because they completely screwed this over. Yeah, that one item you have, it's actually a magic item. Use it to not lose. I thought that was really fun. And the fact that they actually used it several times, like in planning their heist, I thought that was really cool too. The graveyard scene, I think is just really funny. And 2, just with that first guy, they're like, wait, does this count as a question? Yes. Blah, 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 blah. Like, as that was going, I was like, yeah, I can definitely see a DM just sitting at the table, smiling and just trolling the players anytime they say something that remotely sounds like a question. This is awesome. During the hither thither staff part, the pudgy dragon, it's like, it's a D&D movie, you know, there has to be a dragon at some point, and there is, and it is this corpulent, overweight dragon. And it was so funny to look at, especially when it's chasing them and it trips and it just starts rolling down the hill. I don't feel like I was watching it and was actively like howling out loud. Because I am in a theater, like I want to have some degree of decorum, but it's just kind of in my head, I'm fucking rolling with laughter as the dragon is rolling. It was really fun. I know there's a part where they're in the maze. Sorry, it was around that part where I'm like, okay, like we're seeing a dragon. That's a really iconic enemy. There's 2 other enemies I really want to see in this movie. Actually, 3. One is a kobold, and we didn't see kobolds. Because I know Clay has told me the story of Tucker's kobolds, which are kobolds supposed to be like the most like easy jack shit enemy of all time. And apparently this one DM made them absolutely terrifying. It's like, I don't know if they'll do that specifically, but like, I kind of want to see kobolds. The other 2 enemies I wanted to see that I did see, one is a gelatinous cube, and we got the cube, and they actually did some really clever shit with it, and the other was a mimic. It was specifically when they're in the maze and there's treasure chests. I'm like, please, please, one of them has to be a mimic. Let one of them be a mimic. Yes. Like, that's amazing. I love this. This movie gets me. Oh god. So there's a scene where they're trying to sneak into the palace near the climax, and they have an illusion. Okay, so one thing I will go ahead and say, I don't know what class Chris Pine was supposed to be, because, he's playing a lute, so I'm like, oh, he's the bard, but he doesn't actually cast any magic, so I guess he's a rogue, but he didn't feel like, he kind of felt sort of like a rogue, but he wasn't doing, like, sneak attacks, or, I guess there were kind of times where he was being sneaky. It just didn't seem like he is aggressively a rogue, but I still enjoyed it. But the part I was going to bring up is there's a part where they're trying to sneak into the palace, so he goes up and starts playing his lute, playing a song for the guards, he's the distraction, and it's actually an illusion being cast by Simon. But Simon ends up getting distracted, and so the illusion starts actively glitching out, and, like, his eyes start bulging out of his head. He just, like, repeats phrases and shit. I think, like, he keeps repeating the same line, and, like, the playing of the lute is off. There's a part where he just goes, fa 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 fa. Like, that was really funny. I loved that. Okay, so the one other thing that I remember really wanting to see in the movie but didn't was Fireball being cast, because, like, when I think of spells from D&D, that's the first one that comes to mind. It's fucking Fireball. We got Meteor Storm. I think it's actually Meteor Swarm, and then Meteor Storm is how it is in Tales. But regardless, we got the Meteor spell. Like, that's kind of the start of the climax. I won't really say anything much else about the climax specifically, but I wanted Fireball. I just wanted to see it get cast. Come on, man. But the climax, like the fight against the big bad evil guy, is a lot of fun. The only other set piece I have to talk about is the prison escape, where they're waiting for Jornathan, the Aarakocra, which, if you're not familiar with D&D and shit, that is essentially a bird person. Like, that is what that race is. So essentially what their plan is, like, we're going to make our plea, and if we think that they're not going to accept us, we're essentially just going to take the bird guy, jump out the window, and use him to kind of sword his safety. Which, it's like, yes, that's the kind of insane shit players would come up with. I love this. This is awesome. 2, it works because it's just that crazy. And 3, as they're about to jump out the window, the council's like, but we approved your pardon. So it's just that when you come up with that perfect plan, it's like, yeah, you literally didn't need to do that. They would have just helped you out. If anything, you've just made your overall situation worse. I love that. I sincerely fucking did. So, I guess now we'll go into the big spoilers, like the finale, the climax. So, just overall, it's a lot of fun. Spells are getting thrown around, shit's getting punched. You're like, oh yeah. And the final fight isn't very long. It's only a couple minutes, which in D&D around, I believe, is supposed to only be 6 seconds. So, generally speaking, combat ends up being, in actual, like, gameplay term, how do I say this? In universe, combat is over in almost like the blink of an eye. Like, it goes by really fast. Playtime, it's like several fucking hours. So the fact that it was only a few minutes to beat the super boss kind of made a lot of sense. I did get to see some kind of, like, cool, fun shit going on. The time stop spell gets countered. I think I stuttered over time. I think I said time spop. Regardless, the 9th level spell gets countered. I'm like, he was casting 8th level magic before. So either through these adventures, he has leveled up and he is now a 9th level caster, so he can counter that, or he just rolled really good on his counter spell. But I appreciated that happened. I kind of, again, one of those moments where, like, I'm seeing what's going on at the table and what's going on in the movie. And speaking of which, when the druid kills her, she, like, the red wizard, whatever the fuck, grabs her, slams her multiple times against the ground, and then just throws her at the wall. And all I could think of was, okay, so this is when you got the final hit, you got the damage, you rolled enough damage, and the DM just goes, okay, so how do you want to do this? And the player's like, okay. So I'm gonna turn back into an owlbear. Okay. Then I'm gonna tackle her, mount her, and I'm gonna grab her and just slam her against the ground multiple times like the Hulk and Loki. And then I'm just gonna fucking yeet her into the wall and have her crash against the wall. It was like, I could just hear the narration going on, and it made me really happy. Okay, the only other things is that Holgar, the Michelle Rodriguez character, dies, but the whole journey, or at least a big part of the journey, was to get a resurrection stone. That's not technically what it's called, like a tablet of reawakening, I believe. But a resurrection stone to bring back Chris Pine's wife. I think Edgin was his name, I think. But since she just died, as she's also been like a mother to my daughter. I like that despite that there's no romantic connection between those characters at all. They're just homies. He's like, no, like I need to bring her back. And how she seems very touched, but almost kind of upset. It's like, you wasted that on me? Why? What's wrong with you? Like, there's something really sweet and kind of sad about that at the same time. And then the fucking ending scene is Hugh Grant goes to prison and tries to pull the same escape plan with the Aarakocra, but there's no window there anymore, so it just fails. And I thought that was a perfect way to end the movie. It made me laugh really hard. So, yeah, that's really it. Like I said at the start, take another shot. This is a really fun movie. It's a good time. I would highly recommend watching it. Again, it's like if you're going expecting this great story, that's really about something, or this, just emotional roller coaster, this is not the movie for you. But if you're just, I want to go, have a good time, see a fun adventure, and still feel genuinely invested in the character arcs that are happening, you're going to have a good time. If you play D&D, I think you're going to have a great time, because like me, you're going to see some of those moments where you're like, oh, he must have rolled really good, or like, oh, he rolled like shit, that's why that just happened, and stuff like that, which I feel like really makes the movie a lot of fun, so just go see it.